The nurture of every person that you come across is actually the processes of life that haven't inherited in nature from both the father and the mother. The person then grows into that stature of individual by the things they go through, the kind of upbringing the person goes through, the kind of experiences of life the person is exposed to, the kind of education environment that the person is exposed to, and all those things becomes the nurture. The kind of things that he is taught to do or not to do, the kind of things that she is taught to be and not to be, those things will eventually become his nurture. So the nature is not something anyone has control over. Your nurture can be controlled. And so, if peradventure you inherited a nature that you don't understand from your parents, and even your nurture, you don't have control over it, it might be actually the only explanation behind your experiences of life. In the sense that you are responding to life in a way that you cannot explain because of your nature or where you're coming from, and because of your nurture, because of how you've been grown, how you've experienced life so far, you are most likely to respond to certain issues in certain ways. But you see, it seems like in the mix of all of these things, it is very hard to even have a good slate. Because by the time you look back at the parents who gave birth to you, there are 1001 things there that you want to edit. 1001 things there that you would not want to do again, that you don't want to continue. Have you listened to a lot of young people say things like, I'm not going to be like you. I don't want to be like my daddy. I don't want to do what things like my mommy. That's you, my mommy. I will not do my own like that. In fact, some parents will even go to the extent of nurturing their children to toe a certain line until the child will grow up and decide to rebel and goes, I don't even want that. Who told you that I even want to become a doctor? I've heard from someone who said to me that I studied medicine because I just wanted to please my parents. I have had people who said to me that, oh, well, and this person is doing so well. I mean, this person had one of the best results. That is a nurture that was sculpted, but the person is now redefining himself or herself. Just in case you are wondering, why am I the way that I am? Why do I do things the way that I do them? It speaks so much to what you inherited from your parents and the way you have been raised. I'll use a simple example to draw this, to make this clearer. There was a young man in the biblical days. He was serving in a particular household. He was serving to marry a particular lady that he fell in love with. Only that he had to serve for 7 years for the woman he wanted to marry. And while serving for those 7 years, by the time it was time for them to give him his wife, they decided to give him the elder sister in place of the wife. And by the time he realized that the wife they gave to him was not the one he wanted, he had to serve another 7 years for the new wife, the real one that he wanted. And by the time he was done with the 14th year, and they had given him the wife that he wanted, he served for another 6 more years. 20 whole years of service. But you see, someone else will be in that servitude and be angry and be upset and be wondering, why is life so hard? Why can't things just be easy for me like it is easy for someone else? Why are things so hard? Well, do not forget that this man in question was coming from somewhere. His own father, was the offshoot of another one who has the covenant from God. I'm speaking about Jacob in the Bible, who is the son of Isaac, who was the promised son of Abraham. The covenant of God that was coming from Abraham became the nature by which Jacob was operating. And because of that covenant, God was willing to help him to go through life and get a lot of things in a good way. But here is he serving 20 years for something as simple as marrying a wife. You see, he saw something in those years of servitude. He stumbled on the technology that produces a particular result that is desired. And what was that technology? He saw that it is not just the quality of seed and the quality of womb that grows a new offspring that determines the final product of that offspring. He realized that those animals were looking at while eating, what they were looking at while mating, what they were looking at when their strength was the highest also has a very strong significance in the kind of child they give birth to. And so by that, he was having plain animals plain animal mate with each other, and they were giving birth to animals with spots. And he was able to also reverse it and have spotted animals mate together and then give birth to plain animals. The reason simply is that it is not just who your father is or who your mother is that determines who you are. The environment in which you grow, the environment around which you have developed, will also play a significant role in who you are. I'm speaking this to fathers to be and mothers to be. It is not just about how well you have become as a person or who you are as a person. It does not translate automatically to having children that are like you. This probably explains some of the headaches of some of very, very quality men and women. And they suddenly wake up to having children who were just the opposite of who they are. No, it is not that the nature that was given to those children was corrupted. It is probably that the environment around which those children were developed had a very significant role to play in who they become. So not only will you have to pay a lot of attention to who you are, if you want to produce a certain kind of children who will be certain kinds of way, you will need to pay more attention to not just who you are, the environment around which you are raising those children. Okay? Now, I was having a conversation with someone who had read this book, and she said to me, that it simply means that when a man gives his seed to a woman, he gives his sperm to a woman, it is all of who that man was, all of who he is, and all of who he will ever be is in that seed that is given to that woman. That person that you are about to give birth to a child for, that child is not just a child. That child is the summation of who that person is, who that person was, and who that person will ever be. And in the other way around, that woman you're about to marry, even though she is beautiful, even though she's intelligent, she is everything, no, the form that all of what you will ever be in life will take is dependent on that woman. Because to a very large extent, the form that everything will take will come from who that woman is. So the nature, who you are, is beyond you. You have to conquer certain things if you don't want it to manifest in the next generation. You have to overcome them now if you don't want them to operate in the next generation. Because if you do not do so, it will become the nature that you bequeath to your children. Now, I'm going to take this forward. Nature, if there's an error in nature, it can certainly be corrected. If you read in the Bible says, if any man be, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17, if any man be in Christ, is a new creature. All things are passed away, all things have become new. It means when someone is being asked to give his life to Christ or to go and become born again and become saved, it is not a religion. It is actually coming to make edits on the nature that you have that is not working in your favor. Because when you take the nature of Christ and you exchange that for the nature that were bequeathed to you from wherever it is that you are coming, from your parenthood, from your grandparenthood, or from the nurture and everything that's going on around you, when you take on the image of Christ, that nature of Christ, it becomes a different one. So when people become born again, it is not a cliche. It is not it's not just a very lovely word that we can use to define when I gave my life to Christ. No, you are exchanging the former nature that you had with the nature of God. And when that truly and genuinely happens, you will have changed so many things. Now, at the point of becoming born again, what simply happens is your nature has changed. But now you must have a different nurture. So the new nurture is that you now begin to study the Word of God, to know, to feed, to grow based on the Word of God, so that your nurture is now different. You now need a different nurture from the one you had before. Perhaps the nurture you had before allowed so many things to be, so many things that are not working in your favor. The new nurture, according to the Word of God, will then reshape your life. And so these things are not religious. They are actually God's response, God's answer to everyday problem. You cannot control or you can't change your nature by yourself. By just wishing not to do wrong again, you cannot stop doing wrong. How many of you have really tried? You've tried not to do wrong. You've put so much effort into not doing something that your daddy did, only for you to find out that you did it even worse than your daddy has done. How many people have tried so much to make sure that certain things do not repeat itself in your own family? And now they are repeating in your own family. It is because certain nature has not changed. Those nature hasn't been exchanged for the nature of Christ, and your nurture has not been changed for the nurture of Christ. Now, based on these two things, it means every person that you see have a different nature and a different nurture. And so it means if you are my neighbor, I am not likely to be responding to issues the way you are responding to issues. Can you now see the reasons why it is the royal law, according to the Word of God, that you should love your neighbor as yourself? If you read in 2 Corinthians, about love, it begins to speak so many things of love, things that are seemingly impossible. Because the person you are supposed to love will never be like you. Your neighbor is not like you. He was not raised like you. His nature or her nature is not like you. His nurture is not like you. And you are supposed to love this person whose way of interpreting life is not the same with you, whose way of responding to issues is not the same with you. Let me even bring that home. So two different people marry each other and they are husband and wives. And these people have different nurture and different nature. And they are supposed to love each other. How is that going to happen when their nature is different? When their nurture is different? When somebody wants to respond to certain things, he responds in this particular way. When the other one wants to respond to certain things, he responds in the other way. And there is no agreement, because if the nature and the nurture is different, how are they going to have agreement? So you cannot see the reason I say again that it is important that we all relocate from our nature and nurture into the nature of Christ and the nurture of the Word of God, so that we can actually agree.